for the longest time in this country, we have had a scenario where people come up with a real estate company. They con people.
Yeah.
Then there are scandals. Their name is all over in the papers.
Yeah.
They go behind the scene, incorporate another company,
yes.
call it a different name, come back to the market, do very intensive marketing.
Yeah.
And then you're all taking your money there. So it's very important that on top of doing a search on this developer, you get to know who are the individuals behind this developer, so that if they have been involved in a scandal before,
Yes.
then you are able to know how to navigate that. But I think the problem with discounts when it comes to real estate, you're given a very short period of time to make the commitment. So then you'll be told this discount will apply if you pay maybe in the next 5 days or in the next 7 days.
Yeah.
And you see, for you, in the rush to benefit from that discount, you end up overlooking so many things that you would have done in terms of due diligence, because sometimes due diligence takes time. You need to get a lawyer, finalize your engagement, you do the searches, you do the search for land, you do the search for this developer. I mean, there's a lot of things you need to look into before you commit.
Yes.
But you see, now when you're rushing against that discount, you're very likely to miss out on all these things. So then you will end up maybe going for a discount of, say, 500,000, end up losing like 8 million.
8 million.
Oh, yes. It has happened a lot of times.
Yeah.
You go for arbitration, and the arbitration, the other lawyer comes and says, actually, this matter is prematurely before this tribunal because the contract says that it shall complete 30 days after the architect has given a certificate. So the architect has not given us a certificate, and so this thing is prematurely. And as much as the judge or the arbitrator will hate to say it, the contract binds you. It says that. So even if 7 or 10 years later, this architect has not given that certificate, you are bound. There's nowhere you are taking these people.
A few weeks ago, I created an Instagram reel where I shared that one of the ways that I make monthly passive income is through a rental apartment. Between 2019 and 2021, I was employed. I had a 9-to-5 job. And I remember that I religiously saved 25% of my income, and I put that money towards buying a rental apartment in Nairobi. While I think that wasn't the smartest financial decision, I eventually earned the coveted title, landlord. And now I earn monthly passive income from that apartment. If you stick around until the end of this video, I will explain to you why I think that wasn't the smartest financial decision. One of the mistakes that I made while buying that property was that I consulted the wrong lawyer. So when the real estate company, sent me the sale agreement, I remember checking through my contacts on my phone to see if I knew any lawyer. And so at the time, I only knew one lawyer. So I called him and I told him that I needed him to go through that purchase agreement and to let me know if there were any clauses that would put me in trouble in future. And so I sent him the document, and I don't know if he read through that document, but 1.5 years later, yes, 1.5 years later, when I read through that document, I realized that there were so many missing clauses in that sale agreement. And one of the missing clauses in that sale agreement was that there were no penalties or there were no consequences if the real estate company or if the developer didn't deliver the property. And it was both, whether he delivered or not, there were no penalties. And if he did not deliver on time, still, there were no penalties. And so, after sharing that reel on Instagram, I realized that over 200 subscribers were also interested in owning a rental property, either in Nairobi and in Kenya. And because I do not ever want you to make the mistakes that I did, I found it fit to invite Kanyiri, our in-house conveyancing lawyer, to come and tell us, what do we need to know before we buy a rental property or an apartment in this Nairobi or in Kenya in general? And if you've been part of the Wealth Tribe long enough, you know that in March, I invited her and she came here and taught us the due diligence process that you need to know before buying land to avoid being conned. So today we are going to focus on what do you need to know before you buy an apartment. Welcome back, Wamuyu.
Thank you for having me. It's always such a pleasure. And I'm glad to be here.
Yay.
Yes, so as she has said, my name is Monica Wamuyu. I am an advocate by profession. I have over 4 years experience just doing conveyancing transactions. So I look forward to us learning because it's really sad how the rate at which people get conned, and especially diaspora clients. So I'm glad. Let's all learn together what to do so that you don't lose your precious money.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm glad that you mentioned especially diaspora clients, because even I, at the time when I was buying this property, I was living in Dubai. So of course, one of the things that happened is I didn't see the property that I was buying, and so the shocks came later on, and that's what we're trying to avoid by having this conversation. Now, maybe we can begin this conversation by you telling us, why have apartments become such a popular investment option in Kenya, especially because when you drive around, when you're moving around Nairobi, the posters are so many, the advertisements are so many, influencing is a lot. Why apartments? Why is it such a popular thing now?
I think apartments, and mostly you'll find apartments in urban areas. It's not in most cases that you'll find them in rural areas.
Yeah.
And the reason is because there's a lot of the population increase in the urban areas is very rampant. So a lot of people are moving into the urban areas. So then this shortage of land to accommodate everyone. So it's not possible for everybody to have a quarter or an eighth.
That's
so
true.
Because of that, now there was need for there to be a strategy where land is now being divided horizontally instead of vertically. So that's how the concept of apartments came up. So you own, say, an eighth piece of land, but so many people own it when it's being subdivided horizontally.
Yes, we are
instead
moving
of
upwards.
vertically. Yes, we are moving upwards.
The land is not expanding this way.
So mostly it's population increase and just the shortage of land in the urban areas.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's true, because either way, at the end of the day, like a majority of the people who live in Nairobi, for example, cannot afford to buy even an eighth or a quarter in this Nairobi.
Absolutely.
So our only solution is to buy an apartment where all of us are sitting on that eighth, but we own a space somewhere.
Yes.
Okay, so what are the different ways that one can buy an apartment in Nairobi, in Kenya?
Yeah, so there are two major ways. One is where you'll find that developer has put up a construction and has finalized the construction. The apartments are ready.
Yeah.
So then they offer you for sale. So you inspect the premises, you go through the apartments, and you choose one that you like, and you say, now I want to buy this one, and you finalize the paperwork and get to buy it.
Yeah.
But the second major way in which a lot of people acquire apartments is through something called off-plan. So off-plan is where a developer comes up with a project. It's not yet implemented. They just have an idea of what it is that they want to build.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll show you a show house, or they'll show you a virtual representation or a model house and tell you, this is what I want to construct. You buy into the dream, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then from the money that the different people put together, it's used in the construction. And then now at the end of the construction, now you get your apartment. Now, the only reason why people will, essentially it's a risky affair, because you see, you're buying into somebody's vision.
Yes.
But the only reason why it's still a very viable option is because then you're able to get that product or apartment at a much more affordable price than the one that is already constructed, because essentially the person who constructed used their own money or even got a facility which maybe they are paying using interest to finance that development. But in this case, you, the various purchasers or the people who will eventually own these apartments, are the ones putting in the money. So then you end up getting it at a more affordable rate than the person who went for a complete development. Yes, it's a risky but a very viable way of affording an apartment, but also you need to do a lot of due diligence for you to get it right.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
And from your experience so far, which one do you think is the most popular in terms of, for us investors, which one do we go for more? Is it the completed development or off-plan? Which one?
I may not know the exact statistics. I'd say it's in equal measures. It just depends on the risk capacity for people. The people who are very risk averse, they would go for the complete development. And on the flop side, they'll pay more. Then for the people who have some bit of appetite for risk, and they would go for the off plan, then they end up getting it at a more affordable price, but then they have to put in a lot in. So I may not have the statistics, but both of them, there are a lot of people that have acquired property through off plan successfully. There are others that have lost through off plan. I may not have the statistics.
Yes. So, while off-plan has a lot of risk here, right? You're taking up a lot of risk because anything can happen within the 2-year period, the 5-year period, and you'll tell us stories of things you've had. We know that for sure the reason why most of us opt, even I, by the way, my apartment, I bought it through off-plan. Thank God the developer delivered what they promised. Not 100%, which we'll talk about, but one of the, apart from that risk, beyond that risk, the reason, there are few reasons why people prefer to go the off-plan way. And, if, for example, affordability. Because as you mentioned, if somebody is selling you a completed one, they probably took a loan facility from a bank, and it's earning interest, and therefore that's why this one is cheaper. Then there's the customization option. Maybe you can measure a bit.
So the customization aspect is where you decide. You see, now when you're buying from a complete development, you take what you get. When you walk into an apartment, you either like it the way it is or not. But when it's the construction is being done off plan, you have some bit of leeway to have it customized to your taste. So then you're able to tell the developer, for mine, instead of doing a closed kitchen, I would prefer maybe an open plan. Or instead of having a pantry, I would prefer this and this. You're able to get it customized to your specific taste.
Yes. That's true. Then there's also the fact that there are flexible payment plans.
Yes. Mostly because of plan development, they are designed to have you paying as construction is happening. So then, if maybe construction is happening over 2 or 3 years period, then you will be paying installments across the 3 or 2 years period. So then it's affordable for most people, because for complete development, mostly the person will want you to pay, to pay outrightly. And
then the other attractive thing about off-plan houses is the promises of discounts. Because I've seen where even on billboards where you're told that if you put down a 20% payment, then you'll get like a 20% off discount. Maybe you can comment on that, because you've told me before that is one of the reasons why people get conned.
Yes. And essentially, there's nothing wrong with discounts. All of us love discounts, whether at the supermarket or at the spa, wherever, we love discounts. But I think the problem with discounts when it comes to real estate, you're given a very short period of time to make the commitment. So then you'll be told this discount will apply if you pay maybe in the next 5 days or in the next 7 days. And you see, for you, in the rush to benefit from that discount, you end up overlooking so many things that you would have done in terms of due diligence, because sometimes due diligence takes time. You need to get a lawyer, finalize your engagement, you do the searches, you do the search for land, you do the search for this developer. I mean, there's a lot of things you need to look into before you commit. But you see, now when you're rushing against that discount, you're very likely to miss out on all these things. So then you will end up maybe going for a discount of, say, 500,000, end up losing like 8 million.
8 million.
It has happened a lot of times.
So maybe we can also have a summary of the risks involved when buying off plan versus buying a completed development. When you talk about for me, when it comes to my contract, is that it didn't say what would happen to the developer if he did not deliver. So maybe you can run us through what are other disadvantages or risks rather.
Okay, I think the way I would approach that question will be at the point you decided, now I have some savings apart, or I have this plan to manage my finances in order at the end of the day for me to get an apartment. I think one of the things you really need to do is, and I've said it over and over and over again, even in our last video, due diligence. There's something that you can never run away from. And in this case, whether you're buying from a full development or you're buying from an off-plan project, you just need to handle due diligence. Of course, you need to do it a lot more when you're doing the off-plan. But then the key thing is due diligence. And due diligence has many aspects and they differ. Maybe we can go over the general due diligence aspect. So the first thing, you need to do a title on the head title. Do a search on the head title. So the head title is the title for the land on which this apartment is being constructed. So you have to do a search, first of all, to confirm that this land actually belongs to this developer and they're not in the process of acquiring it, because sometimes, and I've seen this happen to so many of my clients who come and, they committed to this project, they paid, some of them even had paid 100% payment, and then now it turns out that this person had not completed buying this developer had not completed buying this
Piece of land.
this piece of land from
Yeah.
the owner, and there's so many things that go wrong in between all that. So one thing you need to satisfy yourself that this head title belongs to the developer, or if it's a joint project, you ensure that. So sometimes there are joint projects where the person who is bringing the finances is different from the person who is owning the land. They're
Yes.
called joint venture
Yeah.
arrangements, and I've worked on them quite a bit. So in that kind of arrangement, you need to ensure that both this developer who is bringing the money and this person who owns the land are part of the contract
Yes.
that you will sign,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So then we have spoken about getting a search on the head title. Then you need to do your due diligence on this developer. What kind of developer are they?
Yeah.
Have they delivered? What do the past projects look like?
Yes.
Get a feel of the work they have done before, because then that will give you that will give you some foresight on what it is that they will deliver for you.
Yes.
Again, most developers are companies. It helps to also go behind the incorporation to see who are the directors behind this company, because for the longest time in this country we have had a scenario where people come up with a real estate company, they con people,
Yeah.
then there are scandals, their name is all over in the papers.
Yeah.
They go behind the scene, incorporate another company,
Yes.
call it a different name, come back to the market, do very intensive marketing.
Yeah.
And then you're all taking your money there. So it's very important that on top of doing a search on this developer, you get to know who are the individuals behind this developer, so that if they have been involved in a scandal before,
Yes.
then you are able to know how to navigate that. So that's very important.
Yes.
So yeah, we have also talked about checking their past projects and see what they have delivered in the past. Of course, for the person who is just getting into the market, of course the risk now becomes higher. But for somebody who's done projects before, then you're able to see what their track record is.
Yes.
The other most important thing is find out whether this person has obtained all the approvals and licenses they need to get from the government. There's some very mandatory documents that they need to have gotten.
Yeah.
For example, they need to have gotten a construction permit from the National Construction Authority of Kenya. They need to have gotten a NEMA license from NEMA, just to confirm that whatever development they are putting up or they have put up is in compliance with the environmental regulations at that time. Also, they need to have gotten some permits from the county government for which they are constructing. So whether it's in Nairobi, Machakos, Kiambu, they need to have gotten a permit or an approval from that county. So these documents are so important, because first, these are documents that this developer has, gone a lot of steps to acquire them. Then, so it speaks to their goodwill, it speaks to their commitment, it speaks to their compliance.
Yes.
So yeah, you need to check all these documents even before you now decide that I'm going to commit my money to this project, or I'm going to sign any paperwork with these people.
Wait, I'll stop you there to ask, as a buyer, because you shocked me when you said that. Of course, I know that our apartment sits on a piece of land, but when I was buying my apartment, I never thought that I'm supposed to ask the developer to prove that he owns that land. That's something I never did, and I think that a lot of people don't think, because for you, you're thinking, I'm not buying land. It's like we separate, yet both of them are real estate investments.
Oh, yeah.
Right? We separate that actually this thing is sitting on land. So you're actually supposed to ask the developer to show you evidence that they own this piece of land.
Yeah, so essentially what they'll give you is a copy of the title document, and you're able to establish the legitimacy or the authenticity of that particular title with the Ministry of Lands. Yeah?
Okay, all right.
I think still on the due diligence aspect, especially when you're buying off plan, you also need to look at things like the building plans. And the reason why it's important to look at the building plans, you need to have an idea of the dimensions for your house, because a lot of people that buy into off-plan developments, they really get shocked when they get into the house eventually when it's done, because the advertisement is usually done in form of, they'll do videos, they'll do virtual pictures that really create an illusion of a very beautiful and spacious house.
Yes.
And to many people, lo and behold, when they receive the apartment, I've seen people saying, I got into my apartment and it looked like a toilet, literally.
Yeah,
the
the
size
size.
of that house, it didn't match with what was the vision that was sold to me at the beginning. So it's very important when you're committing to such a project in an off plan. So have a look at the building plans and get to get to whether you
Understand.
engage a professional to make you understand that the dimensions of this house will look something like this, so that you don't get a lot of shocks.
That's very important,
Yeah.
because I've come to establish, I included, like generally human beings, unless you're an architect or you work in real estate,
Yeah.
we actually cannot compute in our brains. We can't compute size the way, because when you're buying houses, we are told square feet, right? You're told that this house is 700 square feet.
Yeah.
That's just a figure. For all of us, we can't understand.
Yeah.
And you know, I am one of those people who I paid for an apartment for a period of 2 years, and then I walked into that apartment, and I knew from the word go that I would never live in that apartment.
Yeah, that's
I would
really
never,
sad.
because I felt that the size of this apartment was so small. It didn't. The apartment doesn't support dignified living, unfortunately. So you can imagine. And you know, between 2020, that was like, I had only worked for like 3 years. So like I was still a young person. So that was a lot of money, and it's still a lot of money for me, right? So you do not want a situation where you pour out all your life savings, and then you walk into the apartment and you're like, I can't live here, and I do not understand even the person who lives there how they will live. So that's very important.
Yeah. So it's important that you think through these things, because you know, we can judge you. You didn't know any
I
better.
didn't know any
you know,
better.
you went for that because you don't know any better. But that's why we are also having these conversations, so that the next person who is considering doing this, they'll actually think through, what are the dimensions of this house? What's are the dimensions of the bedrooms? And those two tiny bedrooms, you know, and don't be lied by the advertisement material, because they're designed to create an illusion.
Yes, and it's marketing.
And and it's marketing.
Yes.
You know, they're selling you what will catch your eyes, what you want to. I mean, they don't care if you come later and discover you don't like the sizes. You know, you've already bought into it.
Yeah.
But also, the other most important thing is to inquire about the quality of finishes that these people use.
That was another shocker when you told me that, like, that is something I was supposed to do, and I didn't know do. The only issue is that, at least for me in this situation, the finishes were okay. They were not spectacular, but they were okay. I can live with them. But I was really shocked that part of the due diligence is actually knowing, are they going to use wooden floors? What kind of tiles are they going to use? So maybe you can speak more about that.
It's really important, because currently I'm involved in a case where the client has paid a premium. I mean a premium price for an apartment somewhere at Lavington. I've paid 43 million.
Oh no!
And this person walked into this house, and it's a big, spacious 5-bedroom apartment.
Yes.
But then when he looked at the quality of finishes, it didn't match what was sold to him in the advertisement material. So this is something you need to inquire. Get to know what kind of finishes or what quality of finishes will be used in these apartments, and you can have that documented in writing, so that at the end of the day, if the developer or the contractor hasn't delivered what it is that they promised, then you're able to have records. Yes.
Also, it's very important we go back to the point about ascertaining the dimensions, because the other shocker that I experienced, oh God, I've had so many problems with this investment. It was my first major investment, was that I walked into this apartment and I realized that it was dark. Like where it was located, the lighting was so poor. And you know, the issue with, imagine an apartment is already small, and now if there's no lighting in that apartment, it feels even that you're squeezed. So that is why it was very important. You taught me that it's very important that if you can go and see what you're buying, and or if you can send somebody to go and see what you're buying, or if it's a virtual tour, make sure you completely understand. Because one of the worst things you don't want to experience is what I experienced, walking into an apartment and you're like, there should have been more windows. I do not want to own this.
Yes, and sometimes the developer will present you. Some of them build show houses, and they're able to put up a show house, and then you go inside and you get a picture of how your house will look like.
Yeah.
Some of them don't have show houses. In that case, you can ask for. Some of them provide you with a model. Just a virtual or a physical model of what the houses will look like. So then it's important for you to have a look at that, because even when you're selecting, I want to have apartment A, B, or 1C instead of 1B, then you are able to look at this model and say, oh, which one has access to the light?
Yes.
Which one has access to this and that? You know, it's very, very important. But also, before we move forward from that point, it's also important that you try to establish what the service charge for these apartments will be. Because one of the reasons why most people would even go to buy apartments is to just get the peace of mind of not having to pay rent. Because I gather you and I, as people who pay rent, you'll agree with me that rent is the one single expense that really
Keeps you up awake at night.
It
Keeps a lot of
does,
people.
it
Yes,
does,
yes.
it does. It makes you worry for your job. It makes you worry for your business because you're like, if anything happens,
Yes.
rent is the one thing you can't seem to, figure out quickly. So yeah, when you go for an apartment, then the one thing you want to solve is the rent issue.
Yes.
But sometimes you find apartments where the service charge is so high, it doesn't make financial sense because if you're running from paying 30,000 shillings rent, then you're moving to an apartment where you have to pay service charge of, maybe 20,000.
Yeah.
Then it doesn't make any financial sense. So you need to get a feeling of what the service what service charge these apartments will come with, so that you're able to make a very informed financial decision.
So what you're saying is that you should know how much the service charge will be for the apartment you're buying before you buy it.
Yes.
Because that is something I also didn't know before I bought. So what happened is that after you buy, so the company, the real estate company I bought from, they also have a management arm where it's like you bought an apartment, but then you can give it to them to manage, get a tenant for you, and then remit the rent to you. And so for me, I was just shocked when I got the invoice, and the invoice included management fee, service charge, VAT. People run towards the landlord thing and they don't understand nowadays even in the state is heavily taxed in Kenya.
Yes,
So there was also VAT on management fees.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was expecting, but then when they advertised for us, when they sold for us that apartment, they told us we expect to get rent of between 18 to 25,000. But
That's like a new
my bank account has never seen that amount of money.
It's like an employer tells you, I'll pay you 100,000. Well, you don't realize it. They mean gross.
They grow
What you're taking home is like 70,000. That kind of scenario. But service charge. And I've actually been involved in a scenario where there were there were more of maisonette than apartments, but also it was managed the same way as apartments are developed. And these houses, somewhere at Ridgeways, they had such extravagant service charge that it didn't make sense. These houses, people were paying 60,000 as service charge for so many years, and they couldn't even fight it because you see, this is a discussion you didn't have when you were committing into the project. Now you have a service charge you cannot keep up with, and even in another more unfortunate scenario, and I think I mentioned to you about it some time back, it's also another scenario where I'm dealing with where somebody owned an apartment somewhere at Lavington, around Valley Arcade area there. And, sometimes in life shit happens.
Yes.
And to this person, a lot of things happened, and at some point he wasn't able to keep up with, the expenses, the water bills, the electricity bill, but most importantly, the service charge. And this service charge accumulated over the years. And eventually what the developer had to do, because, they still keep some level of control on these houses, as far as managing the common areas and all that.
Yeah.
So at some point they had to go to court to get this guy to forfeit this lease to them, because then the service charge accumulated for so many years and he wasn't able to pay. So service charge is a really impactful or really important aspect of owning an apartment. So you really need to really factor it in when you're doing your financial planning.
So it's possible for us to be buying an apartment in the name of running away from paying rent, and then we find ourselves in even deeper trouble where we are not able to pay the service charge.
Yes. Which is why you need to have this discussion so early on, so that if it's something reasonable, then you commit to it. But if it's something that is almost the same as paying rent, you'd rather pay the rent,
But in this, I'm curious, in this case, these Ridgeways apartments where they are paying such ridiculous amounts of service charge, who controls these service charges? Is it the developer who decides that this is how much the service charge should be, or why? How did this happen?
Well, it's a bit of a long story, but also there's something in that aspect that is changing. So for the longest time, we didn't have very good regulations
in
that govern those apartments and the way common areas are being managed. But that's about to change because we have a new law that the government is trying to implement. It's called the Sectional Properties Act.
Yeah.
But before that law was implemented, so for the longest time, what would happen is that a developer will put up a development and then incorporate a company called a management company.
Okay.
But most times, the directors of the developer or the seller would be the same directors of the management company. Essentially, what's supposed to happen is that after all the apartments have been sold, everybody gets a share in that management company, and then eventually the management company is transferred such that all the owners are shareholders in the management company, and they have voting rights, and they have decision-making powers.
Yeah.
But for the longest time, what the developers have been doing is to delay that process of, transferring the management to the owners for as long as possible.
Why?
So
How does it benefit them?
it benefits them because they have such a high level of control. So if they want to be charging that 60,000,
Yes,
for so long, because they have all the voting rights at that point before they transfer something called reversionary interest.
yes,
It's some things that are a bit technical, but when that act that I'm telling you about, the Sectional Properties Act, is implemented, it will kind of solve that issue.
So
Yes.
the people who are watching us, who are either in the process of buying an apartment or they dream of buying an apartment, because that's also valid. In this sale agreement or in the property agreement, it should contain such a clause that says that eventually when you buy this property, you should have share ownership in the property management.
Yes. But usually you find most agreements, they say that. But the timeline between which you get that share and you actually become a full-fledged member of that management company, to the point that you're able to make decisions, or you're able to, vote and have a say. It takes so long. They don't provide for that timeline.
Yes.
But yeah, that's one of the things you need to be very keen when you're reviewing the paperwork.
Okay. Then we can continue with due diligence. There was a bit about ascertaining the possibility of modifications.
Yes, I think that one you mentioned, we touched on it a few minutes ago when we said, so at the point when you're negotiating to get this house, then you can have a conversation with the developer or the contractor, all them together, because you see, you have a developer on one hand, and then they engage a contractor who will do the actual work.
Yes.
So then you're able to, have discussions with them and negotiations and tell their house. It has an open plan kitchen. I do not like open plan
Okay,
kitchen. For mine, let's work with this. Or I've seen that you intend to do ceramic tiles on the floor. I would prefer if mine came with wooden floors. Then now you're able to have a discussion and say, so what does that look like? Will you need to put in more money? And actually, I can even give you an example of the one that I'm telling you, the case I'm involved with, where this guy paid 43 million for an apartment, and they walked in and they didn't like. They had to pay so much more to get them the modifications that they wanted, and the situation just ended up being very messy and very hostile.
Yeah, and very expensive.
And very expensive even to him. And this is something that he had not budgeted. But if this conversation is but if they had this conversation from the time go, then he would know at the time that my apartment is being flawed. Then because you see, especially in his case, the ceramic tiles had already been installed. So you can imagine the process of changing that to the wooden floor that he had wanted. There was a lot of they had to undo so much work, and there was a lot of wastage. And it was messy and very expensive. So it really helps to have this discussion from the time you're committing. I mean, I want to go forward, but let us have it captured down that in my apartment, I would love to have this kind of floor. I would love to have this kind of finishing.
Actually brought back the concept of modifications, because I remember there was a time I was having a conversation with you, and you said that you've experienced a situation where people have bought an apartment up to 8th floor, and because the developer still has control, the developer one day decides, no, I want now to add more floors.
Oh yeah, that has happened. And actually it happened to there's a matter I was handling, and I was going, because with this paperwork, we say the devil is in the details. And for sure the devil is in the details. Because in the most times you'll be presented with a booklet that has like 40 pages. You don't have the time to go through that.
I didn't go through it.
Oh yeah. So that happened to me when I was reviewing a lease, and I see a clause that's saying that the developer retains that right of extending the floor upwards or constructing another structure next to yours, and you wouldn't have any say. But also, what does that mean for you? If, for example, your apartment is, say, this building you are in, and then there's a clause in your paperwork that says that this developer reserves the right to put up another structure just next. What does that mean for you in terms of this lighting that you have access to? That will be blocked out. So will you get value for value for money?
No.
Yeah, so you really need, either by yourself or you engage a professional, you really need to go through the fine print. You need to
I don't even think anybody, there are very few people who have the capacity to go through that document by themselves and see the fine details. And that's why we are having this conversation today, that you actually need a real estate lawyer, or rather a conveyancing lawyer, to go through those documents, because at the end of the day, maybe even from my story at the beginning, the reason why I went through what I went through was because the sale agreement was drafted by the developers' lawyers.
Yeah.
So obviously the developer, the document, just like we said, when it comes to land, the document was very one-sided. It was favoring him as a developer, and that is why the clauses were missing. So you need to hire your own lawyer.
Oh yeah, sure.
That is one of the reasons why we are having this conversation. You have to hire your own lawyer. Otherwise, if you don't, mambo ni mawili. You either go through, get the contract that does not favor you because it will be drafted by the developer, or you hire your own lawyer and you're protected through and through when you do not lose your money.
Sure. I mean, there's no shortcut. I mean, most people like shortcuts, but properties, acquiring property is not one of those things you go for shortcuts, because property is expensive.
Yes. And it's almost like a permanent asset, yeah?
Yes, getting a decent one-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood in this Nairobi, depending on whether it's off-plan or if it's from a complete development, it won't cost you anything less than between 6 and 8 million.
Yes.
So why would you want to put that kind of money and not be willing to pay some, maybe 100 or 50,000 to a lawyer to just make sure that your investment is protected? Yeah, there's really no shortcuts.
And even when you talked about how a developer can later come and put another development right next to it. So yes, the developer might have delivered your apartment. Yes, the developer might have delivered your apartment without hiring a lawyer, but what protects you from the developer actually building another one? Nothing.
You really need to go through the fine print and just ensure that you are protected on all angles.
Yes. What is the difference between a sale agreement and an offer letter?
Okay, now I think now we are moving into the paperwork.
Yes.
Because I think everything that we've covered from that point, from the time we started this discussion, just really covers due diligence, all the questions to ask, all the things that you need to be aware of, even before now you decide to say that, yes, I'm moving on with this, or I'm taking on this project, or I want to commit my money here.
Yes.
Of course, the next most important thing is to have the paperwork finalized. And there are usually there are two papers you'll be presented with. And the first one is the letter of offer. So the letter of offer is basically an offer. So I'm telling you as the developer, I'm offering you this and this apartment, and these are this price, and these are the payment plans. It's usually a very brief piece of paper, usually
like 1 page or 2, yeah.
And the problem that comes with the offer letters, most people get the offer letters and they think they have a contract and they go ahead and make payments. Yes, but it's really problematic because, as I'm telling you, it's simply an offer. I'm telling you, I'm offering you this.
Yeah.
And usually it will have a part where you accept. But really, it doesn't have the things that go into this contract. It doesn't have the clauses. It doesn't have so many things. So then if you make payment based on these, you really are exposed or vulnerable in this process. So what I advise most people is the developer is presenting you with this, or the seller is presenting you with this letter of offer. Can it come with the sale agreement, so that as you engage your lawyer, have your lawyer look at the letter of offer and look at the sale agreement at the same time. So that now, at the time now you are saying, yes, I accept, and putting, pen to paper or making that payment, then you have a full picture of all the terms and conditions that come with this contract. So then you're able to make a very informed decision, because now what happens, most people will get their offer letter.
That thing sounds so basic, yet it's also a mistake that I did.
You get the offer letter, you put pen to paper, you say, yes, I accept, looks very good, you make the payment. Then when the sale agreement comes and it says that the developer has the right to put up another structure just next to you, as in, doesn't matter that it will block out your light or your passage of air. What do? You have already committed. It now becomes so messy where you have to go to court to try and get the refund of your money. It becomes so messy. So it's really important that the time when you're doing the paperwork, have your lawyer look at both the letter of offer, look at the sale agreement, and now on the basis of full information and full terms and conditions, then they tell you, this is what you're looking at. Are you willing to? There are 1, 2, 3 things I have pointed out. Look at it, weigh the risk, decide if this is something that you want to go ahead with. So as you're putting pen to paper, really just have you really, you need to have all the full information that comes with this contract.
And when you say that, it also reminds me the conversation we had when we were talking about buying land.
Yes.
You said that we should be in a situation where we are buying these properties, we should be in a situation where we are so protected that in case anything happened, because it usually does happen, you can go to court. Because when talking about land, you said that you've had situations where somebody already paid the money and they're coming to you and there's literally nothing you can do. And I was so shocked because so in the situation where a lawyer cannot even help you.
There are, which is why it really helps. And also sometimes I get clients coming to me and I wonder, why did you just come to me after making the payment? As in some of the mistakes we can say flag out as mistakes that clients make is come to you after they have some paperwork you didn't get an opportunity to look at. It doesn't work in their favor, and now they have come to you after they have signed. Or they have come to you after they have, signed and made some payments.
Yes.
Because then it becomes so hard to go back and negotiate terms.
Yes.
It becomes so hard to go back and negotiate terms or to even try to get these refunds. So really look for a lawyer as early as possible. Before you sign anything, before you pay anything. I think to have lost you, to have, your question was, I don't know if I'm answering that exactly.
You have, because I was also commenting on the fact that
the clauses. Now I get it. I get it. So there's some clauses we really need to be, and you may not have the capacity to have an understanding of them, which is why you need your lawyer on board to look at these things. So for example, if you're buying an apartment from a complete development, there's some things you may not pay so much attention to as when you're buying maybe from an off-plan.
Yes.
Higher. For example, when you're buying from an off-plan, your money is what is going into the construction, right?
Yes.
So sometimes we have this scenario where you make payments. So for example, your paperwork says you will make monthly payments of say 200,000 every month for 1 year. So for you comply with your contract. And you faithfully pay every month. But when you visit the ground, nothing is happening.
I have coaching clients. I can name like 5. Go through that process, especially diaspora clients, because I coach a lot of people from the diaspora. And they're like, oh, first of all, I earn in dollars or I earn in pounds. Therefore, 200,000 shillings. It's a lot of money, but I can afford to. So they will send this. They even have a standing order.
Exactly. Most actually people do through standing orders. But what you don't ask yourself, what is happening on the other side of the construction is actually something moving.
Yes.
So the thing that I like to advise people buying from off-plan is have your payments pegged on milestones. Construction milestones.
Okay.
So as you make these major deposit payments, can you at least see all the approvals? This guy has obtained all the approvals or the permits. And it's like just a show of commitment. By the time you're paying another installment, can there be at least foundation having been laid?
Yes.
By the time you're paying another installment, can the substructure be up? By the time you're paying another installment, can they be starting to fix the windows? So that you can see where your money is going. Because mistakes happen when you make payments. You finish making payments. There's nothing on the ground.
Yes.
Then it becomes it's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
So always insist on that. And most
and it should be written, yes.
Yes. It needs to be really captured. Before you make these installments, number 1, this needs to have been completed on the ground. Before you make installments, number 2, this needs to have been done. So that you get a feel that this person will actually deliver. Because when you finish payment and they're on the foundation, and sometimes also the thing that happens is people take on so many projects. So you'll have real estate companies that decide to take like 5 projects at a go. So you'll be paying money for your project, but your money is going to complete another project where the people in that project paid and the money was pocketed. Then now it just ends up being a cycle of
it becomes a pyramid scheme.
Yes, it does. For lack of a better word, it becomes a pyramid scheme. So it's one of the clauses that you really need to be keen on, the payments being pegged on milestones. The other most important clause you need to pay attention to is, for off-plan that is, you need to have a very definite completion date. If we say your apartment will be ready for occupation on, say, 12 December 2024, let it read 12 December 2024 and let it be cast on stone, because usually most developer lawyers have this thing where they put a clause, and let me tell you, I tell you the devil's in the details. And people don't speak that out if you don't do this, like if you don't engage a professional who does this on a daily basis. So there's this clause that you read, it most off-plan developments that say the completion date for this development shall be 30 days after the architect has given the certificate of completion.
What does that even mean?
So it basically says that this contract shall be considered as completed after 30 days when the architect for this project has now given that certificate to show that they have completed the works.
That could be any day.
Exactly. But you see, when you read it at first, you won't think, what does this mean?
It sounds logical.
It sounds logical.
Yeah, especially
if you even flag it out.
And it sounds logical, especially if you have faith in the developer.
Oh, yes.
Because a lot of people that I've interacted with, they'll tell me, I'm buying an apartment from this developer, and ask them why. Because we went to school together. Because he's a friend of a friend. Because, right? Or because he's my brother's, spouse or something. And because of that, because most people, at the end of the day, we do business with people we know. So a lot of people will not find that as a red flag.
Yeah.
Because they know the developer.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's a really problematic clause. And I've even been involved in a case where so this lady had made payments in an off-plan project, of course. And, they made the same mistake most people make. You make payment. There's nothing happening on the ground, but because your contract says you make payments, so she made payments, standing order faithfully, she finished. And 2-3 years later, nothing is happening. So she decides, okay, now I want to get my money back because clearly these people are not giving me the apartment. So she goes to court. And at court, she's told, actually, your contract has a clause saying you can't come to court because your contract says you're supposed to go for arbitration. Okay, now gets a lawyer. Okay, acha tutoke kotini, let's go for arbitration. They go for arbitration, and the arbitration, the other lawyer comes and says, actually, this matter is prematurely before this tribunal because the contract says that it shall complete 30 days after the architect has given a certificate. So the architect has not given us a certificate, and so this thing is prematurely. And as much as the judge or the arbitrator will hate to say it, the contract binds you. It says that. So even if 7 or 10 years later, this architect has not given that certificate, you are bound. There's nowhere you're taking these people. I mean, literally, I saw that happen to someone who we were representing, and it was a really sad scenario.
That's a bombshell. The contract said that she can't go to court.
It didn't say she can't go to court. And I'm telling you, these terms are usually drafted in a very, schemy manner.
Yes.
It doesn't say she can't go to court. It just says the completion date. Because it's at the completion date when you say, now you have defaulted. But the completion date is when the certificate, 30 days after the certificate has been issued.
Yes.
And this certificate hasn't been issued. So the completion date is not yet, has not yet reached.
Yes.
So even if 10 years,
5 years,
15 years, 20 years, literally, if you're to interpret this contract literally, which the court will do, it doesn't matter how much they pity you. I mean, it's the nature of contract. And it's unfair.
Very bad.
It is what it is.
It is what it is because you did not hire a conveyancing.
And also before I forget, another very important clause to pay attention to is something called defects liability.
Yes.
So defects liability says that because you see, this is construction that you haven't done yourself. It has been done by a developer, and the developer has done through a contractor who they have a contract with. But you don't have a contract with the contractor.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So then if you move into your apartment and within 2-3 days things are breaking down, you're identifying defects left, right, and center. What recourse do you have? Essentially, your contract should have a clause saying within 6 months from the time you take occupation, if there are any structural defects in that house, they're supposed to be rectified by the developer through the contractor at no cost to you.
Yes.
Because essentially it means it's not a case of wear and tear or anything. It's just there was a structural defect. So this is another very important clause to pay attention to, especially whether it's for off-plan or for complete development. So, I can't exhaust the clauses you need to pay attention to,
but
which is really why you need to consult a lawyer, because we can't really exhaust things even in a 1 hour
and
2 hours.
And that clause is very important because I have a friend who bought a 14 million apartment, and like 6 months later, he realized that he needs to change all the interior finishings of that house, all of them. And so obviously it cost him another 2 million that you had not budgeted for. It's just that you're living in this house, you're not comfortable. If you do not change this finishing, it doesn't bring you joy. It's a waste of the 14 million. So you either move out and leave it, or you just commit to this 2 million. And just this is again something that would have been avoided.
Yeah, definitely. But also the other clause, even before I forget, it's so important I can't even overlook it.
Yeah.
It's the one that stipulates what will happen. So, for example, you've agreed that, or the contract says that this apartment will be delivered and be ready for occupation, say 30th of December 2024 or 30th of December 2025. Say if it's a project starting now, then now it comes 30th December 2025. The project is not ready for one reason or the other.
Yes.
What recourse do you have? Then that really needs to be captured very well in the agreement, because again, most contracts will say that in the event that the developer will refund your money because they haven't delivered, that will be done after they have resolved the unit, right?
Oh,
Yes, a lot of contracts say that. It's the contracts that come from the developer's lawyer, and you haven't had a chance to get your lawyer to renegotiate these clauses.
Yeah.
Most of the contracts say that, and it becomes really problematic because now clients come to you and tell you, this guy has not delivered. This is my sale agreement. I want my money back. You go through the agreement and it says if there's default and they need to refund your money, it will have to be done after resale of the unit. So even if to go to court, then the lawyer will just go to court and say, Your Honor, we haven't resolved this unit, so according to the contract, we do not have an obligation to refund this money.
The more we have this conversation, the more I realize that it's obvious but not obvious. Like, it's obvious in that, as if I was a developer, of course I would draft a contract that protects me. It's so obvious, but then to the as buyers, it's not obvious. And also I've also realized that there's it's like a fear, right, of developers. It's like where you feel that, yes, I am buying the apartment, but the developer is like a god. Because, you think that, we also assume that even that the developer owns this whole building. And maybe that building, some of it is owned by the bank or other people. So there's also the fear, and that fear makes people want to rush into decisions, which is very important for us to remind people that, just like you said, buying an apartment is a journey.
It's a journey. Oh, it's a journey. When the Supreme Court, was it in 2017 when it said, elections is not an event. It's a process.
It's a process.
There's one process, then another process, then another process, and if one of the processes goes wrong, then the whole thing goes south. It's the same thing as when you're buying a property, and especially even in a long process like an off plan.
Yes,
it's really not an event. It's a process.
Yeah,
and you need to be keen on each and every stage of that process. Otherwise, you'll get it wrong. Yes.
When an investor has done, let's say they've done their due diligence, they've consulted a lawyer to make sure that their paperwork has been done properly, like you said, make sure that your lawyer sees both the sale agreement and the offer letter so that you do not commit to the wrong things.
Yeah.
And so after you've done all that and even the registration has been done, what else are you supposed to, where do you go from there?
We've covered it well. So due diligence has been done, the paperwork has been looked at, and the lawyer has given you the go-ahead that, taking into consideration all these terms and conditions, I think this is a safe investment.
Yes.
So then you sign the paperwork, you pay the purchase price, registration is done. So for the longest time, registration is usually done by the lawyers for the developer, and for quite some technical reasons that I may not want to get into for now. But registration of the title is usually done by the lawyer for the developer. So the role for your lawyer is, once this registration has been done and the documents have been delivered to your lawyer, then your lawyer needs to go through them one by one and just verify that everything was done as per the contract or as per the law. So they look at the title, has it been properly registered?
Yes.
They look at the documents that come with the title. So you remember initially we talked about the approvals and permits that you're supposed to get.
Yes.
So at this point you're also supposed to get copies of those documents. So you'll get the copy of the NCA construction permit, you'll get a copy of the NEMA license, you'll get a copy of the certificate of approval from the county government. But on top of that, now because at this point construction has been completed, there are some other sets of documents that your lawyer needs to look at just to make sure that you're safe and you're going to live in a good house.
Yes.
So once construction is done, the architect for that project is supposed to issue something called an architect certificate of completion.
Okay.
So your lawyer needs to look at a copy of that certificate, just the architect confirming that they have completed all the structural work that needs to be done. After the certificate of completion is issued by the architect, the county government also inspects the apartment or the construction and just verifies or certifies that it is actually fit for habitation. So at this point, they give something called a certificate of occupation or a occupation permit.
Okay.
So again, your lawyer needs to look at that document. And so many other documents, really. I may not be able to exhaust all of them, but also they include whether the developer has paid their all outstanding land rates and land rent for this property. You will need to see their KYC documents, so many other things. So once the lawyer looks at all these documents and tells you, okay, everything seems to be checking out, then the other thing your lawyer needs to do is to do something called a post-registration search. So this is just a search confirming that at the Ministry of Lands, the record actually read that you are now the owner of this particular apartment. Say if it's apartment 13B, it now reads in the name of Agatha Wanjiku. So then that's a post-registration search. It's very important that your lawyer gets that. Then now at the point where she or he is giving you the document, then they're able to verify that your investment is safe. Now you can go and put your title somewhere safely.
And anyway, when you say that there's so many documents, you can't even exhaust them in this conversation, that also says that don't trust yourself as an individual that you can read this agreement and actually come to a conclusion that you know what you're doing. It's better to be safe and involve somebody who's dealt with this over and over again, and you will point out this wasn't done, and let's follow up to understand why it wasn't done before it's too late.
Yeah. Also, on top of that, if I may add something, again, at this point, you need to verify that whatever it is that this apartment came with in terms of facilities or amenities, for example, so you'll probably, your paperwork may read that this apartment comes with one or two parking slots or parking spaces, then you'll need the developer or the seller to point that out to you. So these are your parking spaces. If maybe the contract says that this apartment comes with a borehole for as a backup for water provision, then you make sure that actually that has been provided. If it says that this apartment also comes with a backup generator, you confirm that that is in place, because all that goes into the value for money. Because if you paid a premium for this property, really needs to come with all these facilities. So it said that the apartment will come with lifts. We've seen developers doing developments where it's a 8-story building without a lift. I mean,
I have seen an apartment that was done with it's like 12 floors. There's a lift, but it doesn't work, and it has never worked from day one. So what they were told is, Ingeni, we will make it on the 10 years later, it has never been done. And also the other situation, this is very important, because I've also seen a situation where you bought apartments and then, yes, it was written that there was going to be a borehole, but then the water ran out. So what are you supposed to do in that case? Are you as people...
So water ran out from the borehole?
Yes. So now there's no water in this apartment.
It doesn't make sense. Why would you provide the borehole without water?
It ran out, so they're supposed to dig a new one.
Oh yeah, they're
so now the reason I'm asking is it I as the investor who is supposed to contribute money if this situation happens, or is it the developer? And should this also be captured in the sale agreement?
I think that would have to be dealt on a case-to-case basis. I mean, is it that the developer dug a borehole at a place where there was no water? That means then they did a shoddy job, which is really on them. But maybe if it's a circumstance that was probably beyond their control, maybe there would be some sort of give and take. Because then who do you allocate for?
Yes.
Yeah, so it would really depend on what are the actual circumstances under which the borehole doesn't have water.
Okay. All right. So, and obviously when we are thinking the kawaida Kenyan or the kawaida investor, when we think about buying an apartment, we look at a billboard and you're like, that 3-bedroom apartment looks nice. It would fit my family, or it would fit my future dreams. And then like it's a 3-bedroom apartment at it's 18 million. And we assume, or we think that I'm actually going to pay only 18 million. Only later for you to be hit with a bill, taxes, service charge, and all. So apart from the sale, the cost price that was listed to you or that was sold to you or that was advertised to, what else should we think about as we are budgeting for this life-changing purchase?
Okay, as we said before, owning an apartment or owning a property is a journey and not an event.
Yes.
And so, so there's a lot of processes that go into completing the whole process. And most of them come with financial obligations. So
Yes.
it's really important that that other than budgeting for the purchase price, there are other very key but costly factors you need to put into consideration. And the most important one, I would call it the stamp duty tax. So stamp duty is a tax you pay to the government every time that there's a transfer of property. And well, it covers other assets, but property is amongst them.
Yes.
So when you're not buying an apartment, because it's a commercial, say to speak, it's in an urban area.
Yes.
The stamp duty that applies is 4%.
Yes.
And in as much as you may think, it doesn't sound like
A lot
it's
of
not
money.
by the way. Let me tell you, it's not by the way, because assuming you're buying a 1-bedroom apartment going for 10 million, the stamp duty alone is 400,000.
Yes.
So you see, this is not pocket change. This is something that you need to really have budgeted for, so that you don't get so many shocks and end up fighting with everybody. You know?
Yes.
But the other most important thing to budget for is for the legal fees. As I mentioned, usually registration is done by the developer's lawyers.
Yeah.
And the practice is, whether you and I like it or not, is that
It's my cost as an investor.
yes,
Yeah.
it's the purchaser who pays the legal fees for the developer. It's just standard practice. Yeah. So then that means you need to have budgeted the purchase price, the stamp duty, the legal fees for the developer's lawyers, and for your lawyer as well.
You know, that is very important for you to say that statement. You said that it's I as an investor who should pay for the legal fees for the developer.
Yeah.
Because I have had cases where somebody was called by the developer and like, here's your bill for the legal fees, and you're like, but that is your lawyer. That is what. Yeah.
I mean, it has its, of course, its history and its basis.
Yeah.
But it's just a practice around here. But also on top of that, you need to have factored into those due diligence costs, the valuation, registration expenses, search fees.
Yeah.
But also the other most important thing, we talked about service charge. At the time you're taking occupation, most developers require you to put in a service charge deposit about 3 months.
Yes.
So again, you need to have budgeted for that. And also things like installation of water meter, electricity meter, all those costs really go back to the
Yes.
to the purchaser. So these are things you need to have looked at. So then the most advisable thing will be, at the point the developer is giving you the letter of offer and the sale agreement, the sale agreement should have a schedule of all the costs.
A schedule of costs, yes. So it doesn't come as a shock.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So you can see, okay, the purchase price is 10 million or it's 18 million or whatever case, then the 4% of that is this.
Yeah.
The legal fees for the other lawyers is this.
Yes.
The cost of installing water meter is this. The service charge for 3 months is this. So you're able to do a very realistic budget, so that you don't end up fighting with everyone.
Yes.
And I wouldn't really judge the purchasers because they don't know.
They don't
you fight
know.
because they didn't know.
Yes. That is true.
So it's really important that you budget accordingly.
Yeah, so I get a lot of people, my coaching clients and well, tribers in general, tell me that I have a budget of 6.5 million, for example, and I would like to buy an apartment, and I always tell them, go to Wamuyu. Go and have that in-depth conversation with her, because I'm not a conveyancing lawyer. Yes, I can give you financial advice on whether you can afford it or not, depending on your income and all those factors. But I always tell people, go to Wamuyu, go and have a conversation with her, an hour or so, a conversation with her. So she tells you, these are the things that you should look out for. This is how long you expect the process to take.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is that I have seen diaspora clients who are like, I'm going to be in Kenya for a month. Is it possible for me to jet in, buy an apartment, and I'm out? I've seen those cases. So I always tell them, relax. It is a journey. Go have a conversation with Wamuyu. She will tell you what to expect, how long you expect to walk this journey, which cost implications you accept, so that by the time you make that decision, you know. Because ignorance is bliss, yes, but at least at one side, we say we never ever want to have an excuse of, I did not know. And that's why I bring such people on board. Yeah.
And actually, we're living in the age of technology. For this age and time for you to be saying, oh, I didn't know I'm supposed to pay legal fees.
Yeah.
Or stamp duty. Really, research.
Yeah.
You know, research, talk to professionals, consult.
Yeah, that's true. So at the beginning of this video, I said that so I would explain why I think that me buying an apartment was the smartest financial decision. And I've talked a little bit about it if you follow the conversation, in that it was advertised to us that by the time we get this apartment, we'll collect rent of between 18 to 25,000.
Yeah.
When behold, service charge, management fees, VAT, that money has never hit my bank account. So that was, at least, I wish I knew that. The other thing is that at the end of it, when I do the math based on how much I bought this apartment versus the rent I'm getting, the return on investment is about 6.5%. And so when I compare it with even something like a money market fund, I feel that at the time I would have put my money into better use by investing in bonds or a money market fund. That being said, we still insist that investing in real estate is a good decision in terms of diversification, because at the end of the day, you don't want to put all your money in bonds, don't put all your money in money market funds. And at the same time, the other reason I'm having in this conversation is that do it right.
Yeah.
Don't just invest in real estate, do it right. So thank you, Wamuyu.
Thank you, Agatha.
Do you feel like there's anything that we haven't said?
I mean, there's a lot to say. I don't think there's any possible way of exhausting it today. But we will keep having these discussions.
Maybe one last thing you can mention. What are these land rates we hear the county government telling people to pay?
So land rates and rents are essentially their taxes, you know. And land rates, they are paid to the county government. So, for example, if your land is in Nairobi, you pay land rates to the Nairobi county government.
Yes.
And for the land rent is paid to the national government. Basically, they're taxes. They're just ways of the government collecting revenue. And for apartment owners, currently, not many apartments have these obligations.
Yes.
Usually land rent and land rates for apartments is paid for the head title instead of for the apartments. But there's a law, as I mentioned, I think when we were starting, there's a law called the Sectional Properties Act. And the intention of this law is to ensure people who own apartments actually get titles that are independent from the head title. So as that law is being implemented, then it will be possible for people who own apartments to actually be paying land rates and land rent for their specific apartments instead of, relying on the management company to fulfill that obligation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you are in the process of buying an apartment, or if you dream of buying an apartment and you have more questions that you'd like Wamuyu to answer, please leave them in the comment section. She answers. And as I said, she was here before. We talked about how to avoid being conned while talking about when you're buying land, and she's here to teach us how to buy apartments. So we will continue having this conversation about what you need to know before you make any real estate investment. So ask, reach out to her. She will help you. She will give you her rates. So by then, how can we reach you?
I think my details remain as what I shared in the last video.
Yes.
And maybe we can put it in the description.
Yes.
But my phone number is 0715 934413.
Yes.
And my email address is Wamuyu Kanyiri and Wamuyu Kanyiri advocate at gmail.com.
Yes.
But that is going to be linked in the description. So feel free to reach out and, do it right. As Agatha has said it. Let's do it right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's stop small embarrassments based on ignorance.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe. And I forgot to say, my name is Agatha from the Wealth Tribe. And this is where we learn how to build wealth together.